So a couple of logistics announcements. Dice is due today, and the coding bat problem set is due today. If you need an extension, let me know. It's a long weekend. Maybe you want to spend some time working on it. I hope you at least started things. Like with coding bat, I see most people have started. There's a couple of 3s and 4s, but at least it's not 0. And for the dice assignment, I would like to see if you need an extension that you tell me, like, oh, I made a die, but I haven't gotten farther past that or something else. Yeah. So for those people that want to take on the challenge, let's see. You are trying to fit as many dice as you can to the screen. Go ahead, you can make the canvas the size of your screen. I think you can tie it to the window. There's a variable in processing that is tied to how big your window is. You can use that variable. It's a global variable. So the requirements on fitting as many dice as you can to the screen, it's like kind of loose. Mr. Simon and I didn't have time to discuss the formal constraints, like having like 1,000 by 1,000 canvas, for example, or having a minimum size of something else. Private comment will do. It's helpful if you keep it all in one spot, like for example in the dice assignment, you can put a private comment there asking for an extension, explaining to me your situation, so I have a bit of an understanding on how much more time you need. Yeah, the reflections I've been skimming through, so if you ask for an extension there, chances are I won't see it, or maybe it'll be too late by the time I see it. So adding it as a private comment gives me an email notification that they posted something here. Okay, common issues. Okay, I'm getting a lot of emails saying that my code works in processing but not on GitHub. So at the very bottom of apcs.github.io, there's a useful link. When you click on it, you'll be brought to this GitHub page that lists any common issues you have when going from processing onto GitHub. Many of these issues have to deal with the fact that there's a translation process from the Java code that you've written on your processing application on your computer, and when you move it onto GitHub, all that gets translated to JavaScript. Okay, and the thing that helps us do that is, I'll show you that thing. Let's go to Dice. So there's a little JS file tied to each of your repositories right here, processing.js. This thing is quite old, and I don't think it's supported anymore by the processing community, because the p5.js that I used in my computer programming A and B, that's become the new popular thing to go to, and that is well maintained. But that's written in JavaScript, yeah? When you're trying to translate between the two languages, this file is used, and it's not as well maintained, so there are functions that don't exist in the specific, like the older version of processing we're using in GitHub. So these list some of the various things. Circle and clear are very common from your dice assignment. Circles being the little dot patterns you have on your die, and clear to get the new set of dice to appear on the screen. Those two things aren't implemented in this older version of this processing.js. So if you have that problem where your program works in processing but not in GitHub, you want to work through some of these common issues. Some of them are easier to find than others, but typically it will be circle, it will be clear. This image one is a little tricky on how to, yeah, images sometimes work funny. And we can meet for office hours. You can send me an email. I'll give you some helpful hints on how to debug your program. Office hours today, 2:15 to 3:30-ish, and then I have to host the Electrical Engineering Club meeting. So we have to hop off Zoom and go into like Google Meets or something to talk about your code. Alright, so I can close this tab, I can leave that up, close this, close, I'll leave that up. So for today's class, I think it would be helpful to just do a general troubleshooting session with you all on common dice problems. If someone wants to share their code, we can work on bits and pieces of it together as a class. The other option is to review the problems from the array1 problem set. If you're stuck on those, I can give you, I'll try not to give you the answer directly. I want to leave you hints to lead up to that answer. Usually the first problem set, it's rather simple, and like with one line of code, or if I reveal one line of code, you'll get the answer. All right. That's doing the learning for you, and that's the opposite of what I want. And then last thing, if it ends up being there's no other kinds of questions, I will try as quickly as I can to demonstrate a ball object that bounces. If you were with me for computer programming A and B, that's our Pong assignment. I figured we'll code that up in Java. If you did take me previously, it's a familiar example, yeah. And for those not, making a ball is still pretty fun, because next week we'll be starting to talk about arrays of objects. Imagine mini balls bouncing around the screen, changing colors, moving in different manners. You'll need an array and you'll need objects to help you control that behavior. Okay, so I got a question, and then the last thing is, if you want to look ahead, you can look into the arrays of objects worksheet and chemotaxis. That's what's going to be assigned next week. These two things right here. Let me know your questions, private message me in chat, and I'll work through them one at a time. The arrays problem set, there was a problem requested on same first last. Same first last. So this slide is going to be very helpful for you to figure out the first thing and the last thing, and then comparing them. Okay, this slide right here, slide number 8. I want to pull up this link. First, same first last. Is this it? No, that's not the right answer right there. Okay, so assuming that you have something in your array, you have an array that's 1 or bigger, because it's not going to work if you have an empty array. You're trying to return whether or not the first thing and the last thing are equal. And I will switch over to processing so I can print out intermediate int array temp equals like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So one of the things you'll need to do is to access the first thing, yeah? System.out.println. How do you access the first thing? That's always going to be position 0. Doesn't matter what your array is, and you'll see both these lines of code still work, even if I change my array temp. And the last thing, you have to use the .length operator variable, temp.length. Okay. You'll notice that when I run this, it tells me an error. It says that, oh, okay, I spelled things wrong. But then after that, it should give me the first one. Or is it? I guess I have to put this into there it is, right? So it says it gives me 4, which is in fact the first thing inside this array. But when I do temp square bracket temp.length, so this thing right now carries the number 6. It says square bracket 6. So this is as if I did something like that. It says that array out of bound exception. Uh-oh. So what does that mean? Remember that for arrays, this is position 0, this is position 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. When you try to go 6, I hope these comments now illustrate why we get that error. 6 is a position that doesn't exist. It is not in your array. So to account for that, it's very common that we do -1 here. Length gives you 1 more than you need. Why? Because we start counting at 0. That takes some getting used to. And now you should see that the first and last thing, 4 and 9, are printed to the screen. Yeah, there it is. I leave it to you to do the comparison, and to convince you, I'm going to add in a bunch more numbers. Okay, and you'll see that this code still works. It gives me the first thing, it gives me the last thing. Gives me the first thing, gives me the last thing. I even add some things in the middle. 1, 1, 1, 1. So still 4 and 6, 5, yeah, 4 and 5. So that's same first and last. You need to put these components together in order to make a comparison. So when it says Boolean like that, remember that's returning values like true and false. By doing so, I think I passed half the test cases. So that's like cheating, kind of. It's like partial credit. All right. The next array problem, or the array1 problem set to review, is add 1 to each. The last one, I see a lot of people are stuck at 9 points out of 10 for this problem set. It's probably because of this last problem. Let me refresh the page, as some of you may be working on it now. Some people haven't even started. What's up with that? Alright, so add 1 to each will now be reviewed. And how should I, let's first view the problem. Okay, well, add 1 to each. Loop through, okay, so it already gave us a hint right there. We have to use loop. Loop through an integer array, adding 1 to each element, returning the resulting array. The array may be of any length, including 0. Nice. So let's shorten this. Let's leave it like size 6. Like that. First off, we have to access each element of our array. So one at a time, I'm going to march through my array with a for loop. Int I equals 0, I less than temp.length. Notice here I don't need to use -1 because it is strictly less than. If you did less than equal to, you'd probably have to do -1 here to account for that off by 1 idea. I++. And for now, we're just going to print out each thing. I'm going to borrow this line of code so I don't have to type everything out. And I here is going to take the place of 0, it's going to take the place of 1, position 2, position 3, position 4, position 5, and then it'll stop, because 6 is not less than 6. That's the I variable. And so now what I expect to see on the screen is this array is going to be printed 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 4 on its individual lines. This is part of the answer. Cool. Next part is we have to add 1 to each of these, so you can probably print something out like this, right? +1, that part I hope made sense. And now we have values 1 bigger than what, 1 bigger than what we had in our arrays. So where, can I make the canvas bigger? Okay. So where the 4 was, 4 became 4 plus 1 is 5, 5 plus 1 is 6, 6 plus 1 is 7, 7 plus 1 is 8, and then we end with 5. Yeah? So far so good? That all makes sense? And then the hard part, in my opinion, is this one. I skipped over these 2 slides, and these are the 2 slides you need for the last problem. Yeah, I think you need this, because you have to return a new array. So what these 2 slides are telling you is that this is how we declare an array of a fixed length to give back to the user. So, for example, in this example, they have 7 cosines, yeah? They're going to be decimals, although the code is skipped over on how you actually calculate the cosine. Notice the use of the new keyword. Okay, new array 7. This array right here, ARR, is completely different than like any other kind of array that's passed to you. So like in this example, right, this line is what we need to use something similar to, double square bracket array using the new keyword. Let me show you what I mean. So here's my int array. Let's call it ANS for answer. And instead of listing them out, right, because we don't know the values just yet, we're going to use that new keyword. New, and what kind of integer array we want? Int of size temp.length. Ants isn't used, it's yellow, but that's fine. So what this line does is it makes a new copy of the same exact length of whatever size temp is. I could make it 1,000,000 integers and it will make me a new copy, a placeholder with 11 integer slots with no values inside. And instead of doing system.out.println, what you're going to do is still need this part, but you're going to store that into answer, one thing at a time. So that's the loop part that comes in. That's, I think, the most confusing part, this line right here, in addition to this line. Okay, this one is just the initialization of the like new array. It only has 1, 2, 3, like 7 things inside, but the values aren't there yet. So if you were to like go here into the problem, if you were to do int array ants equals new int square bracket nums dot length, and then returned it, it would give you, it gave us a bunch of zeros. I don't know if that's true in CodingBat, or it might be true in CodingBat. I'm not sure if you see zeros or you see like nothing. It may be different. Zero is different than like null. Anyways, it's getting too complicated. So putting these two ideas together that I currently have on the screen, you should be able to add one to each. Are there other questions on the array problem set or on your Dice assignment? If you're willing to share your code, like email me the PD file, we can debug that as a whole class. Because I know there are like a set of common issues that we have for this Dice problem, this Dice assignment. Okay, we can go over make middle too. Make middle. Make middle, second to last one. So this one, I think I can just give you a verbal hint. So I'll write you some code too, why not? Never mind. So in make middle, notice these, well, I need to delete something. Let me delete this number, okay? Because it tells you you're always going to have something even, which simplifies the problem a lot. You want always the two things that are in the middle. And you're told that any array you're given is always going to be 2 or bigger and also even. So it's always going to be these two things. That's nice because you can do system.out.println like in this thing of temp of length 6, I want position 2, right? I need to print out 2, I need to print out 3. Sys 10, sys 10. 2 and 3, right? That gets me in the middle. But because the array value changes, like you can't just hard code these numbers to always be 2 and 3. That's not enough. So you have to use a variable that changes depending on the length of your array, something like this, with some math, like +1, -1. And in this make middle problem, you are also expected to return an integer array, like so. Okay, so you kind of have two options to go about that. You could do int square bracket answer equals int, and you know that your answer always has two things. You can do something like that. Or you can kind of be like really, you can do something like temp, like you could declare them into an array like this, right? Like temp2, temp3 is now in an array, and we're going to store that in int ants, in square brackets, because it's an array, equals like this. Like that's totally legal right there. System dot out dot print. It's so long to type this thing. Silly Java. And then to show those things to the screen, ants square bracket 0, and then ants square bracket 1. Right, so the code, these 4 lines of code seem kind of silly because all it does is just like put it into a new array, but like that's what you're going to struggle with. The expectation for this problem is that you give it an integer array, so fine. Even though temp is 6 things, I made a new array, ants, that's just 2 things, and I've printed it to the screen. That's analogous with returning it. Okay. What I left out is using temp.length, nums.length. That's how you make it stretch, right? If you know the length of the thing, you can easily find the middle by doing some math. Other questions?
Add 1 to each, and it's saying I'm getting the error int cannot be dereferenced.
Int cannot be dereferenced. Kindly message me your code. I have to look at the syntax of what is written. So this question is around add 1 to each. They're getting an error about, I forgot the exact wording.
Do I email it or?
You can just put it into private message me in chat, and I'll copy and paste it. It's short enough that the chat message will be fine. Okay, great. So give me a moment to get it from chat. So that's nice. I want the stuff inside the middle. So notice here, it's very close to the answer, but we're getting a particular bug. Let's see where. Run. I'm getting all green, yo. What error are you getting? What? Okay, so refresh the page, hang on to the code. If anything, clear your cache for the website. That's kind of odd. Yes, let me do make middle once more. So in make middle, it could be done in like 2 lines of code, even 1 line, I think. The important part is that you need to make a new array. So int ants equals int array. you just need it to be of size 2. Did I do that right? It looks funny to me. New. I'm missing the new keyword. There we go. Okay, that's the first thing. Because it might give you 10, it might give you 12, 14, 16 things, but our answer only has 2 things inside. So this first line it initializes and declares an array of size 2. Next up, we have to fill in like the left side middle and then the right side middle, right? There's 2 numbers in the middle. So ants1 and ants0 have to be filled in. Nums, and then question marks will go here. Okay, that's the hard part. And then at the very end, you're going to return answer. What's helpful in accessing the middle is this variable, nums.length. So this thing up here, right, it has 4 things inside, so nums.length gives you 4. This thing gives you 6. This one gives you 2. So this part, this variable, nums.length, nums is the name of the array you're given, .length. Using that inside the question marks will lead you to the correct answer. Right. So I think there's enough time for a few more questions if you have them. Otherwise, take this time to finish your Friday reflections. Submit them now in these last 3 minutes of class, so that I don't bother you in the afternoon saying that, hey, where's your reflection? 1 out of 4. Missing Friday reflection, depending on my mood. 3 out of 4, 3.5 out of 4. Yes, go ahead. Dice project works too. We can talk about common dice project problems. Please. How do you use a font and image on GitHub? There's a bit in the help, but I'm still kind of confused. So, images, it's, let me see how I demonstrate images. So, let me see if I have a way to show that. Well, I think it's a process. Is it a GIF? What do I want to show you? So, use the image function, but you also have to upload the image to your website, like into this GitHub repository. The other thing for text, right? If you want to change what text you're using, that involves changing like this thing right here. You're borrowing text like Times New Roman and like Open Sans or whatever font you use. Go here, right? And then you'll likely change this word inside your index.html. But that stuff I don't teach in this class. Like CSS, could also change it here. Looking at what legal font families there are, and if you want to get more specific, you can dive into like a quick Google search on changing the font for a website, and then follow through those various tutorials. And you'll likely have to modify things in your HTML file and your CSS file. Cascading style sheet. As for images, you can email me and we can continue our discussion there. All right. What resolution do you... So I have a MacBook Air. My resolution is what? Take a look. Does it tell me? I don't have a 4K monitor, right? I got the monitor that most people have. So I'm going to formally dismiss you all now. Make sure to get those reflections in. You should have a late penalty. I'm getting very tired of late reflections. So get on it.